Last week, I was standing at a rain-slicked intersection in a bustling urban center watching a delivery rider leaning over his handlebars. His face was illuminated by the harsh blue glow of his smartphone, but he wasn't looking at a map or a text. He was scrolling through a series of simplified logic pathways, a breakdown of how his last 3 deliveries were calculated. He looked almost triumphant, pointing at a specific line of data and showing it to the rider next to him. "See," he said, a visible sense of relief breaking through his exhaustion. It wasn't a mistake. The system was capping the surge because of the traffic light density on 5th Street. Now I actually know. For years, these workers were ghosts in a machine, navigating a black box jungle where their pay, their routes, and their very livelihoods were decided by an invisible, inscrutable digital leviathan. They accepted the algorithm's whims as a force of nature. Frustrating, but, absolute. They were mere data points, optimized to the physiological breaking point by platform capital that operated like a sovereign state, answerable to no one. But the air has changed. I remember attending a closed-door tech briefing recently where a high-level executive was practically vibrating with indignation. He wasn't talking about a market crash. He was talking about a violation of corporate soul. A new series of directives had just landed on his desk, forcing his company to do the unthinkable. Hand over the keys to the secret sauce. The proprietary algorithms that dictated human movement were no longer allowed to be private enigmas. They were being reclassified as public infrastructure. The executive's outrage was palpable. He called it the end of the digital frontier. Yet, back on that street corner, the rider wasn't seeing an end. He was seeing the return of his own agency. This wasn't just a technical update. It was a systemic assertion of the right to explanation. It leaves you with a haunting question. As we navigate this watershed moment in 2026, are we finally dismantling the digital feudalism of the last decade? Or is this move toward transparency just the first step in a much larger, more complex geopolitical struggle for the soul of the internet?
Well, it's the exploration of exactly that tectonic shift, from platform-led digital abstraction, where that writer you saw was optimized purely for profit to state-governed algorithmic governance, where the algorithm must now justify its dictates. That is our mission today.
Right.
We are looking at a fundamental crisis, the complete erosion of digital ownership, the deeply rooted exploitation of labor in physical and virtual spaces, and the ensuing profound geopolitical struggle for what we now must call digital sovereignty.
Okay, let's unpack this because the picture painted here is truly sobering. We're talking about technology not just managing work, but actively dictating human mental and physical health. It starts right down at the ground level in what you call the black box jungle, this micro-level crisis of algorithmic management.
Exactly. The paradigm shift here is the move to pervasive monitoring. And you need to realize this extends far, far beyond the typical visibility we associate with the gig economy. Your Ubers, your delivery apps.
This isn't just about a guy on a bike.
Not at all. We're now seeing AI and algorithms widely deployed in traditional industrial sectors as well, notably in sprawling warehouses, massive fulfillment centers, and on manufacturing floors. This is the point where the machine stops being a productivity tool and starts feeling, very much like a warden.
And the cost of that, according to the research, is immediate and physical. The central finding across the board, whether we're talking about queue monitoring in a supermarket or delivery targets for a logistics fleet, is that this kind of pervasive, real-time monitoring, it causes pronounced negative impacts on worker mental and physical health. It's not just stressful, it's actively detrimental.
That's the core tragedy of it. Workers are locked into an environment of constant real-time micromanagement and automated assessment. There's literally no moment of the shift that isn't being judged or recorded.
The pressure must be immense.
It is. Think back to that anecdote you opened with, the delivery driver. Our sources highlight a specific driver who reported feeling such extreme pressure from algorithmic time constraints that he felt compelled to jump red lights or brake dangerously hard just to meet the schedule.
Wait, compelling drivers to risk their own safety just to meet a digital target? That seems insane.
It is insane, but the system prioritizes throughput and efficiency over human judgment or physical safety. The driver even admitted to sometimes needing to use a mobile phone while driving just to navigate the app's demands or confirm a time window.
So the algorithm's demands are overriding basic road safety laws.
In effect, yes. The digital imperative overrides established safety protocols because the algorithm doesn't see human risk. It only sees task completion time. And this constant pressure, it manifests as extreme stress, anxiety, and ultimately burnout.
So we're talking about a digital form of efficiency management. But it's far more intensive than anything we saw in the Industrial Revolution. It's not just about timing a few specific actions, it's about optimizing the entire physiological capacity of the worker. I saw a note about manufacturing environments where workers were expected to log 95% of their activity during their shifts. Why that specific number, 95%?
It's about eliminating almost all downtime. It's about planning the working day with the maximum possible intensity hour by hour. If the system knows you are 95% active, it can then optimize the remaining 5% into targeted necessary breaks.
It eliminates everything else.
Everything. Personal time, cognitive breaks, moments of collaboration. It's technology being used to create continuous, sustained pressure.
And that constant surveillance, that automated assessment of every single second, it inevitably results in this profound and debilitating sense of unfairness and alienation. If you're being pushed this hard, you need to know why, and you need some recourse if the system gets it wrong.
Precisely. The systems are opaque. They are the very definition of a black box. Workers are often completely unaware of exactly how their personal information, their speed, their micro breaks, their error rates is being collected and structured.
And how that data is then used against them.
Right. How it guides fundamental decisions about their jobs, including shift allocation, performance reviews, and ultimately their pay. That lack of transparency is a primary source of the distress. It creates the feeling that they are being judged by an unfair, invisible, sovereign power.
To really grasp this quantification, we need to dive into the literal architecture of labor tracking, particularly in these massive environments like Amazon fulfillment centers. It's not just one app on a phone. It's an entire integrated, redundant system designed specifically to turn messy, unpredictable human effort into cold, manageable data points.
It truly is a complex technological assemblage designed for total control. It begins with individual barcodes assigned to every worker's badge. Those are the digital identity markers.
Your digital dog tag.
In a way, yes. And tracking occurs through multiple channels. You have handheld scanners, which monitor every activity, speed calculation, and even the physical location of the worker. Sophisticated workstation software that calculates performance metrics in real time. Cameras placed strategically throughout the warehouse monitoring movement and pace.
And even the HR app is part of it.
Even the internal A to Z application used for HR issues and notifications. It feeds comprehensive behavioral data back into the surveillance engine.
The granularity is what's so shocking.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the specific metrics used because they are brutal and unforgiving. The primary metric everyone knows is the rate.
The rate, yes. It measures tasks completed per hour. So the pick rate, the stow rate, the scan rate. And to put some numbers on this, which is essential for understanding the pressure, during peak seasons, these rates are pushed incredibly high, sometimes demanding that a worker process up to 420 units per hour just for picking.
420. That's 7 units a minute, nonstop.
7 a minute. If you stop to tie your shoe, the clock is running against you.
That sounds physically and cognitively impossible to maintain for an 8-hour shift.
It is designed to be aspirational and exhausting. But if the rate is the speed target, the enforcer is TOT, or time off tasks.
Time off tasks, so tracking inactivity.
Exactly. The system rigorously tracks any inactivity, and the enforcement is draconian. Workers share that being recorded with more than 2 hours of accumulated TOT over a shift or pay period could lead directly to instant termination.
2 hours, accumulated, not even all at once.
Accumulated. The algorithm holds the immediate power over your job security.
So the system detects if you've stopped moving or scanning for more than a couple of minutes, and if you accumulate those small infractions, your job is just on the line. But what about the immediate pressure? The thing that keeps the heart rate up minute by minute?
That would be the scan-to-scan time. This monitors the precise interval between scanning one item and scanning the next. It's the metric that provides the real-time, minute-by-minute pressure.
It's the tick-tock of the algorithm.
It serves as a constant, unforgiving reminder of the expected pace. If your scan-to-scan time lags for even 10 seconds, the system registers it, the performance monitors flash, and the worker knows they are falling behind the accepted rhythm.
It's the sound of the digital whip. And this pervasive system, it logically creates an environment of total quantification where the worker is stripped of their professional identity. They internalize the reality that they are, and I quote, treated more like a number than a person.
And this is not just an emotional response from the workers. The system forces this perspective. Even managers and process assistants, the human element overseeing the floor, spoke about how easy it is for them to fall into this.
They get caught up in the logic of it.
When you are managing high volume and your own performance review is tied entirely to throughput, you are compelled to stop thinking of every worker as a unique person with unique needs. The goal becomes the number, the metric, the quota.
The system dehumanizes everyone involved, not just the people at the bottom. And those numbers, as you pointed out, are designed to be absolute. Tell me again about that 99.6% benchmark. That's just staggering.
It's the haunting expectation of perfection. Imagine a worker achieving 99.6% of the expected rate for the week. Logically, in any human endeavor, that is exceptional performance.
That's an A++.
Exactly. But in this quantified algorithmic environment, unless the worker can provide a formally accepted documented excuse for that 0.4% shortfall, a system error, a known machine breakdown achieving 99.6% is still considered underperforming.
Unbelievable.
The algorithm's expectation is absolute. It is designed to maximize every last ounce of labor, and anything less than that is a failure.
That's fascinating and terrifying. The very systems designed to measure productivity simultaneously produce anxiety, unfairness, and profound health issues. It's hard to overstate the mental toll this must take on a human being. But here is where the human element fights back. And it's often with a remarkable degree of creativity and collaborative strategy. Because the system is so pervasive, workers can't openly challenge it without risking immediate termination. So they turn inward. They actively deceive the labor tracking system through sophisticated internal knowledge, what they call tricks or hacks.
Right.
These are designed to artificially boost their rates, secure precious moments of respite, and reclaim a fragile sense of agency.
This is a critical finding. The human drive for autonomy never fully dies. This behavior perfectly illustrates what sociologists analyze as the dialectic of consent and resistance. Workers are manipulating the process, they are finding loopholes, but
they're still working toward the company's goal, in a way.
ultimately, they're also finding ways to meet or sometimes even surpass the production goals. They are simultaneously resisting the control mechanism while reinforcing their commitment to the underlying system. It's a game of survival.
Let's break down these tricks because they are brilliant, starting with those that involve what's called active consenting resistance. These are hacks that covertly align with the management's overall goal of high throughput, even if they violate the spirit of the tracking system.
A widespread example is cherry-picking tasks. The system assigns a pick path based on known inventory locations. If a worker gets assigned a sprawling, highly inefficient, time-consuming pick path that they know will tank their rate,
You just log out.
they quickly log out of the handheld scanner for a calculated duration, usually around 5 minutes.
And what happens when they log out? What does the system do?
The system sees the path as unpicked and inefficiently allocated, so it reassigns it to another available worker. When the original worker logs back in a few minutes later, they get a new, hopefully easier, shorter path. It dramatically boosts their overall efficiency and rate for that period.
They're manipulating the scheduling algorithm itself.
It's a trick that maximizes their output by manipulating the very logic designed to control them.
Wait, they literally exploit the system's logic about inefficient pathing to game it into giving them an easier workload. That's almost brilliant and terrifying in how quickly they had to learn to subvert their own tools.
It reveals a sophisticated understanding of the system's weaknesses, but the most audacious hack is arguably virtual picking.
Virtual picking, what is that?
This directly exploits the structure of the scan-to-scan mechanism we just discussed. Instead of physically running all over the massive warehouse, workers will print out the barcodes for the items in their known locations in a designated area, and then they scan them all in a single sitting at their cart.
So they are simulating the physical act. They're not actually moving.
Exactly. They eliminate the physical travel time, which is what the scan-to-scan timer penalizes. By scanning 50 items and locations virtually at lightning speed, they artificially skyrocket their pick rate to impossible levels.
Which gives them a huge buffer.
A massive buffer, allowing them to meet impossible quotas by entirely gaming the digital layer that supposedly oversees their physical reality. It's the ultimate loophole. If the system only cares about the data input can be faked to grant physical respite.
So they use the very metric designed to track their physical movement against the system. A similar approach is used to manipulate the take AT time, right? The average time to scan or stow an item.
Yes. One worker shared that if they had a batch of 10 identical items, like 10 books or 10 small electronics, they would fundamentally change their behavior. They wouldn't follow the normal cycle of scan, stow, waiting for the system prompt.
What would they do instead?
Instead, they would grab one item, scan its barcode, scan the shelf location, and then repeat the scan process 10 times immediately on that same item before stowing all 10 physically at once.
So the system only sees 10 instantaneous scan cycles.
Precisely. The system registers 10 lightning-fast scans, drastically lowering their average take A2, even though the physical act of bundling and stowing the 10 items took a bit longer. They are using the system's own metrics against it to create a massive performance buffer, allowing them to ease off the pressure for the next hour without falling below the acceptable rate.
So they're using active resistance to boost their rates and protect their jobs. But not all resistance is about high scores. Sometimes it's just about survival and reclaiming simple human dignity. And this is where we see passive and collaborative resistance designed purely to secure respite.
The ubiquitous time-off task threshold, usually set around 2 to 3 minutes, is exploited as the critical window. Workers use this small, calculated risk window for quick, unsanctioned bathroom breaks, a sip of water, or a quick snack.
They're masters of the countdown timer.
They know exactly how long they can be invisible before the digital red flag goes up.
So essentially, the entire workforce is playing this frantic, silent game of don't push the button every time they need a sip of water or a quick mental breather.
It truly is.
Yeah.
And collaboration amplifies this defense mechanism. If one worker is stepping away, say, for a break that might take longer than that 2-minute TOT window, they can ask a coworker, who might be stationed nearby, to quickly scan an item at their station.
And that resets the clock.
Exactly. That small act instantly resets the TOT timer, preventing the system from flagging the absence and allowing the first worker slightly more time before they raise a red flag with management.
These tricks are so deeply revealing. They demonstrate this inherent human desire for, self-determination, creative efficacy.
All of it. Even when workers engage in these acts to keep up with impossible production goals, they are simultaneously asserting control over the process, finding loopholes in the digital fence, and proving they are more than just the numbers on the screen.
That micro-level struggle, the feeling of being a digital serf trying to game an invisible lord, it leads us directly to the macro-level crisis. It raises a huge question about the structural nature of our economy. Are we still even in capitalism? Which brings us to part 2. The conceptual threat, the rise of what's being called techno-feudalism.
And that conceptual framework, it really begins with a foundational economic shift. The complete erosion of property rights in the digital sphere. The fundamental reality of the digital economy is that it operates almost entirely on a licensing model.
Meaning you don't own what you buy.
You don't. When you pay a substantial amount of money for a digital good, a movie, an ebook, a high-end software package, or a game, you are paying for temporary, conditional access, not permanent ownership.
That distinction is so crucial. If I buy a physical book, I own it forever. I can burn it, lend it, sell it. You're telling me that if I buy a digital movie today, 5 years from now, a corporate bankruptcy or just a policy change could wipe that purchase off my hard drive entirely? That's the real threat here.
Yeah, that is the threat. And we have stunning, real-world examples proving this vulnerability. Consider the racing game The Crew. The video game giant Ubisoft decided to shut down the servers that supported it.
Okay, that happens with online games.
But critically, they didn't just stop updating it, they quietly removed it from players' digital libraries. Even customers who had paid full price for the game, hundreds of hours invested, potentially suddenly found their purchase entirely erased and unplayable.
So the license expired when the corporate infrastructure was dismantled. Your money bought nothing more than a temporary rental.
Nothing more. And what's terrifying is that this isn't just a gaming footnote. This licensing model is foundational to big tech's power. Amazon for Kindle ebooks, Apple for iTunes Media, massive platforms like Steam, they all explicitly reserve the right in their terms of service to revoke access to your digital purchases if they deem it necessary.
The illusion of ownership is pervasive because the consumer is trained to click buy. But the legal reality is always license.
And this model actively erodes crucial, long-standing legal principles that underpin property rights, specifically the first sale doctrine.
Remind us what the first sale doctrine is, simply put.
It dictates that once you buy a physical item, a vinyl record, a painting, a car, You have the absolute unconditional right to resell it, lend it, or gift it to anyone you choose. It's how the used book market works, or how eBay functions.
The foundation of a secondary market.
Exactly. But courts have repeatedly ruled that this doctrine, designed for physical property, simply does not apply to digital purchases, because those are licenses, not sales.
And the attempt to challenge this model was systematically crushed, right? Tell us about the company ReDigi.
The legal defeat of ReDigi Inc. solidified this reality across the entire digital landscape. ReDigi attempted to create an innovative marketplace for reselling pre-owned digital goods like music and ebooks. Their technology was clever.
How'd it work?
It verified that the seller had only one authorized copy of the file and deleted it from their device before transferring the license to the buyer. It mimicked the physical transfer process digitally. It seemed like a perfect solution.
But the courts rejected it. Why?
The court ruled that even the transfer of a digital file constitutes a reproduction under copyright law. And since the first sale doctrine doesn't cover reproduction, the entire concept was illegal.
So that failure effectively solidified the notion that in the digital world, transferability, the ability to sell or gift what you bought, is largely non-existent.
You are perpetually dependent on the platform's willingness to grant you access, making the platform the ultimate authority on your property.
This perpetual dependency and the centralized control over property rights lead us straight to the core conceptual threat, the Techno-Feudalism Hypothesis, championed by figures like the economist Yanis Varoufakis. And the argument is that what we are experiencing isn't just extreme late-stage capitalism, it's something else. It's an active regression to a digital form of feudalism.
It's a compelling, but yes, a controversial thesis. The critical shift is this. Big tech platforms have transcended being mere market participants, companies that compete in a market. They are the market. They act as digital lords who possess overwhelming centralized economic power, dictating terms for everyone, consumers, producers, content creators, and workers alike.
So let me get this straight. If the platforms are the market, how does that change the fundamental nature of wealth accumulation? In capitalism, wealth comes from profit derived from innovation, risk, capital investment. Where does wealth come from in this new digital feudal structure?
It fundamentally changes the equation. In techno-feudalism, wealth is primarily accumulated through platform ownership, through collecting rents, rather than through traditional profit derived from innovation or risk-taking.
Rents, like a landlord.
Exactly. The digital lord collects tribute or rent simply for allowing trade or interaction to occur on his digital land or platform. The platform owners profit simply by being the gatekeeper and infrastructure owner, regardless of their ongoing innovation efforts.
That makes the digital serf metaphor in the warehouse, which we discussed earlier, even more accurate. The serf had to give a portion of his harvest to the lord just for the privilege of working on the lord's land.
Precisely. And the mechanisms of exploitation leverage our constant participation, creating a continuous stream of wealth for the lords. The first mechanism is our unpaid labor.
What we do for free.
Every time you post content on Reddit or Facebook, or simply provide data, your click paths, your preferences, your behavioral patterns, you are providing unpaid labor. This is immediately capitalized and commodified by the platform, fueling its valuation and its algorithmic advantage. You're working for the Lord simply by existing on his digital property.
Which is then used to enforce the next form of exploitation, subscription slavery. The reliance on subscription models that force consumers to rent, renew, and repeat access to fundamental tools and services.
This is a powerful shift away from asset ownership. If you cancel your Adobe Creative Cloud subscription, you lose access to the suite and potentially your own files. That's a powerful lock-in mechanism. But the most absurd and chilling examples are when this model bleeds into physical goods.
Ah, the infamous heated seats example.
Yeah.
We need to linger here because this is where the absurdity really drives the point home.
Yes. We have seen luxury car manufacturers, notably BMW, charging a monthly fee for capabilities that are physically built into the car you already purchased. The hardware for heated seats is installed, the capability is simply locked behind a paywall and can be activated for a monthly fee.
And Mercedes did something similar.
Mercedes-Benz offered a subscription for an acceleration increase, which was just a software tweak for a car that is already physically capable of the performance boost.
That feels like the purest expression of digital rent-seeking possible. I bought the physical item, I own the hardware, yet I have to pay rent on a software switch to use the full functionality of the physical property I already possess.
It's proof that the logic of digital feudalism access over ownership is actively colonizing the physical world. It ensures a perpetual revenue stream for the platform or manufacturer, regardless of whether they deliver new features or risk new capital. The cost to them is zero. The obligation to pay rent is permanent for the consumer.
And finally, the algorithm itself is repurposed from a neutral tool into a weapon for consolidating power. This is the pervasive manipulation aspect.
Algorithms are no longer just optimizing information retrieval. They are monitoring, predicting, and actively manipulating human behavior purely to draw maximum value from the user and to consolidate the platform's market dominance. They guide your attention, shape your purchases, and influence your social interactions, all to lock in the feudal arrangement and ensure you remain on the Lord's land, providing continuous unpaid labor and paying perpetual rents.
This digital feudal structure has profound implications for human value, particularly how we view knowledge and education. The long-standing economic framework of human capital theory, which saw education as a fundamental investment to improve individual productivity, is now meeting the overwhelming dominance of what's called algorithmic capital.
Human capital, your skills, your experience, your education, it has fundamental constraints. It's tied to the individual, it depreciates, and it requires physical practice and continuous learning.
It's analog.
It's analog. Algorithmic capital is the new form. Its essence is the systemic transformation of human behavior and cognitive processes, how you learn, how you solve problems into quantifiable, optimized capital resources. This is achieved through the synergy of data, algorithms, and computing power.
Because if human capital is what you know, algorithmic capital is the machine learning system that figures out how to optimize it and then sells that optimization 10,000 times over with near zero marginal cost.
That's a perfect distillation. This shift is driven by the intrinsic nature of algorithmic capital, starting with its near-perfect replicability. Data assets, such as learners' click paths, correct answering rates, and points of cognitive failure, are captured and structured in real time.
And those assets are cumulative. They grow over time.
Exactly. Platforms like Newton analyze millions of student answers globally to build predictive mastery models. They can then sell that highly refined data and the resulting learning pathways over and over again. The data asset is replicable and cumulative. Its marginal cost is near zero, and its predictive accuracy increases every time a student interacts with the system.
And this data fuels the intelligent systems themselves.
Yes. Machine learning and natural language processing allow systems like Duolingo to dynamically adjust teaching content and difficulty based on A/B testing and real-time performance. They optimize the course design to a degree a single human teacher never could.
We see claims of increasing learning efficiency by 200%.
And systems like iFlatek's AI Companion evaluate language pronunciation in real time, providing immediate personalized feedback. They achieve capital appreciation by providing large-scale services learning solutions for thousands, even millions of people in a way no traditional human-intensive educational institution can ever match.
But when a system collects biometric, emotional, and cognitive data at this scale, there are enormous ethical challenges lurking behind that efficiency. The scale of data collection and the opacity of the systems introduce immense risk, fundamentally challenging the notion of fair education.
The primary risk is algorithmic bias. Studies have shown that intelligent tutoring systems can systemically misjudge specific groups. An experiment conducted at MIT, for instance, showed that certain tutoring algorithms exhibited error rates for knowledge point prediction that were 15% higher for African American students than for white students.
So if the foundational capital asset, the algorithm, is inherently flawed, the education delivered is inequitable. It widens existing societal gaps under the guise of optimization.
It can, yes. And beyond bias, we are talking about highly sensitive data. What are the security risks when these systems capture so much about a person's cognitive process?
The data security issue.
We can't ignore it. These education systems generate incredibly sensitive information, including biometric data and emotional data captured through expression and speech analysis, often necessary for the personalized feedback. This sensitive, intimate information is at high risk of abuse, either through hacking or corporate repurposing. This is why we are seeing increasing calls for clear ethical guidelines, such as those that mandate algorithm explainability and explicit data authorization, just to ensure that this transformation benefits human development rather than purely serving capital appreciation for the digital lords.
It's clear that whether we look at the micro-level exploitation of the warehouse worker or the macro-level conceptual collapse of ownership, the crisis stems from unchecked private power. It has centralized control, degraded labor, and even eroded the value of human education. This brings us to the final act, the geopolitical response, which culminated in the decisive regulatory directives of 2026.
The crises we've discussed, the black box exploitation and the rise of digital feudalism, forced nations to confront a terrifying reality. Private corporate power was beginning to structurally undermine national stability and security. Geopolitical events in recent years dramatically raised the stakes, making it impossible to ignore that critical systems of democracies, government functions, healthcare logistics, core intelligence workflows are concentrated in foreign jurisdictions.
Primarily built and owned by U.S. tech giants.
Yeah.
The danger is a lack of national control over critical infrastructure.
Absolutely. This concentration of control makes dependent nations acutely vulnerable to rapid geopolitical shifts and the political whims of another sovereign nation. The core realization here is that dependency is not collaboration, it is strategic weakness. Relying on US-built technology, AWS for cloud storage, Gmail for government communication, Microsoft 365 for internal operations, created a profound strategic vulnerability.
How exactly does a foreign government exert leverage through a cloud provider? It seems so abstract.
The mechanism is legal and swift. The U.S., using legal instruments like Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, can compel American companies to limit access, hand over data, or fundamentally alter service provision for specific foreign nations or entities.
So a political decision made in Washington could disrupt the critical functions of a dependent nation's government, its healthcare system, and its private sector activity within hours.
What once seemed unthinkable, an access denial or a deliberate data bottleneck, is now a plausible, recognized strategic threat.
This sounds chillingly familiar to lessons we thought we had learned in the industrial age. It's about supply chains.
We need only look at recent history for the parallels. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed systemic vulnerabilities when critical medical supply chains were concentrated in a single foreign jurisdiction, making masks and ventilators scarce and politically leverageable.
And Russia's use of gas.
Similarly, Russia's weaponization of gas dependency proved that economic interdependence can quickly be repurposed as political coercion. Digital infrastructure follows the exact same pattern of concentration and leverage, but with systems that govern everything from traffic to elections.
There was also that deeper concern over military procurement and the structural fragility it exposed. Even the persistent rumors, true or not, that certain foreign-source military aircraft might contain remote kill switches, forced governments to fundamentally reconsider the risk of reliance on foreign powers, particularly during conflict. The vulnerability is structural, and it pervades every layer of modern society.
This systemic vulnerability led to the conclusion that algorithmic opacity represented a form of private sovereignty, a digital secession from state control. Platform capital was usurping regulatory, allocative, and even judicial functions, effectively overriding the public good for private profit. The state realized it had ceded control over the infrastructure governing its citizens' daily lives. This simply couldn't be tolerated in the face of escalating geopolitical tension.
This urgency brought us to the 2026 watershed moment. This was the moment that regulatory directives landed on those executives' desks, the moment we opened the deep dive with mandating algorithmic transparency and initiating a structural recalibration of power.
It was a huge shift.
Platforms were forced to move from acting as quasi-governmental authorities back to their proper function as strictly auditable digital infrastructure providers.
This was a systemic political assertion of human agency, manifesting concretely as the right to explanation. In East Asian legal philosophy, this was often referred to as the right to know the logic, or the right to know the logic. The crucial point is that the fundamental question governing human interaction with technology was shifted.
It moved from how much to why.
Exactly. It moved away from how much profit was extracted to why a particular outcome, a pay rate, a high performance rating, a denial of service, a sudden deranking occurred.
And the answer could no longer be proprietary corporate secrecy. It became a matter of public governance and auditability, just like auditing a public utility.
Exactly. The ultimate implication of this shift is existential for the state. A government's legitimacy is now intrinsically linked to its ability to govern code. The state that cannot audit the algorithms shaping its economy, its educational systems, and its social life is seen as forfeiting its claim to future relevance.
So this is why the ability to govern code is now viewed as a core state capacity. It's essential for maintaining sovereignty in the digital century. If you can't see the code, you can't govern the society that code dictates. So the micro-level anxiety of the rider at the beginning, the one who finally knew why the surge was capped,
was the earliest indicator of this massive macro-level shift. He was exercising his newly asserted state-backed right to explanation.
He was the test case, illustrating that when the logic is revealed, agency returns. Now we can look at the East Asian prototype for how nations successfully made this transition, proving that this shift from platform extraction to state governance is workable and strategically sound.
The strategic response in East Asia has been particularly illuminating, providing a model for how centralized state capacity can assert control over private algorithms to align technology with collective societal goals, specifically national industrial stability and workforce resilience.
Let's focus on the first strategic transition, moving from platform-led digital extraction to state-governed algorithmic transparency as a mechanism to optimize physical supply chain efficiency and safeguard industrial productivity.
This is perfectly illustrated by the case of Minho, a logistics supervisor in Busan. What was life like for Minho before 2026?
Before the mandates, his massive logistics warehouse operated under what was essentially a digital pressure cooker, driven by opaque private platform algorithms. These systems constantly generated phantom quotas, targets that shifted and increased without warning, purely focused on short-term platform profit.
So workers and machines were pushed to the point of physical collapse just to shave seconds off a delivery window or reduce a few units of cost.
And this environment was profoundly corrosive to the national human capital base.
And how did the 2026 directives change Minho's reality?
With the new transparency mandates, his warehouse installed what was called a sovereignty dashboard. This meant the governing logic of the platform, how quotas were calculated, how routes were assigned, how break times were factored in, was made visible, auditable, and subject to state regulators. The pace was explicitly forced to match scientifically validated human endurance metrics and long-term national industrial goals.
Not just extracting data and profit.
Exactly. So the state's intervention recalibrated the technology's priority.
And the outcome was this strategic recalibration that redefined the goal. Worker health was now treated as a vital national asset. The algorithm, now transparent, serves the physical supply chain's long-term stable efficiency, not just the platform's short-term quarterly bottom line.
The state reclaims the role of the supreme rule setter, dictating the terms of engagement for technology within its borders.
Okay, so that's the supply chain angle. Let's move to the second strategic goal, the defense of human capital and social cohesion by actively preventing the digital alienation of the workforce, which is crucial for long-term national resilience.
For this, we look at the story of Lim, a veteran gig economy driver in Shanghai. For years, he lived with the crushing feeling of digital alienation in the early 2020s. He felt like a ghost in the machine, where an invisible landlord harvested his every movement, penalizing him for necessary acts of humanity, like a necessary bathroom break. This was the ultimate expression of what was called algorithmic parasitism.
How did the state intervene to stop that parasitism?
Following the 2026 shift, the state mandated deep, proactive audits of the core algorithmic logic that dictated Lin's life. The goal was to force the platform to internalize the societal cost of burnout and alienation. The direct, tangible result was seen in Lin's new contract. It included something called human resilience credits.
What exactly are human resilience credits? How do they work in practice?
They are a system intervention that mandates predictable, unpenalized downtime. They are a consequence of governing code to protect workforce dignity. These credits might translate to mandatory, guaranteed, 5-minute, unpenalized rest periods every hour, or an enforced cap on consecutive working hours regardless of surge pricing.
So it wasn't just a pay bump. It was the state ensuring that the digital age doesn't produce an exhausted shadow of a functional society by making human capacity an inviolable metric within the code itself.
That's it, exactly.
And finally, we see the redefinition of algorithmic governance itself as a core state capacity, eliminating the threat of digital feudalism and aligning technology with physical output goals.
This is demonstrated by the experience of Roko, a small-scale electronics manufacturer in Osaka. She nearly lost her family business due to what we call digital enclosure. A dominant e-commerce platform's hidden algorithm deranked her products, often favoring its own white label brands or those of large politically connected competitors.
This was the digital equivalent of a feudal lord imposing impossible tariffs or kicking a merchant off the main road.
That's a perfect analogy.
How could a private algorithm have that much power over a national economy's physical producers?
Because the platform was the only market access, the algorithm's proprietary bias meant that true, high-quality manufacturing was being choked out by digital manipulation that prioritized the platform's financial portfolio. A state-led audit intervened, revealing the proprietary bias in the code and compelling a system reset.
And this intervention wasn't about consumer protection, was it?
No, it was about protecting the national manufacturing base.
And what was the stated goal of that reset?
It forced the platform to align the digital marketplace with the nation's physical output goals. The ranking logic had to favor measurable quality and reliable production capacity over internal marketing strategies. Hiroko described this as a return of sovereignty to the shop floor. By treating algorithmic governance as a core state capacity, the state is actively eliminating the digital feudal lords and ensuring that the infrastructure serves collective survival goals focused on stability and national industrial strength.
The East Asian prototype illustrates that the strategic implementation of mandated transparency yields broad systemic benefits, far beyond just easing worker anxiety.
Critically, mandated transparency dramatically lowers systemic transaction costs.
How does making rules public lower economic costs? Usually, regulation adds cost.
Well, when the rules of the game are public and auditable, trust increases. Workers in the logistics sector, for instance, are no longer spending time and energy trying to guess the system or worrying about opaque punishments. They understand the payment structure and can better anticipate demand patterns because the calculation logic is transparent.
This open book approach reduces friction. It minimizes wasted effort on those work games we talked about.
And it boosts overall economic throughput rates across massive sectors like logistics and services. The anxiety dissipates and human effort is directed back toward actual productivity, not gaming the system.
More fundamentally, this is a form of civilizational defense against digital chaos.
Absolutely. Mandated transparency builds a cognitive firewall against what we might call digital nihilism. By injecting determinacy into the lived experience of the individual worker, knowing that the rules are fair and visible, it fosters predictability, reduces the pervasive anxiety of the black box, and, crucially, strengthens the social cohesion essential for a high-trust, resilient society.
Because uncertainty breeds distrust and fragmentation. Transparency breeds stability.
Exactly. And in an increasingly volatile world, auditability is a national security imperative. Opaque recommendation and content moderation algorithms are not just commercial tools, they are profound vulnerabilities that can be exploited for mass information manipulation and ideological penetration by external actors.
That's the ultimate defense benefit. Transparent, auditable algorithms become the immune system for the digital frontier. If you know how the system decides what information to prioritize, you can monitor and regulate foreign influence attempts. The state is protecting its cognitive space by governing the code. So what emerges is this clear and, frankly, necessary paradigm contrast. The West is struggling profoundly with the algorithmic jungle, characterized by corporate sovereignty, proprietary secrecy, and the resulting social fragmentation and distrust.
Meanwhile, the East Asian prototype demonstrates a successful digital compact, grounded in robust state capacity, prioritized social cohesion, and the active protection of human agency. It shows a path towards strategic resilience in the digital century, where technology is embedded within a human-centric order.
The transformation we saw in 2026, the shift from chaotic, unaccountable algorithmic power to governed, transparent infrastructure, was a decisive moment. Digital civilization chose accountable order over extraction. It definitively reaffirmed that technology must ultimately serve the stability and flourishing of the human world it was built to inhabit.